What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Or at least basketball fan. I know Cujo Blues here. Happy Friday to you too, Cujo. Appreciate you hanging out, pal. I'm sure we'll have a few other people coming in. I'm getting just slow reports as usual on who's here so far. But I know everybody will be joining us soon. I sent a note out on Twitter. A little bit of late notice, a little bit of a late show today. Starting up here in the top view with the board already up, because I mean business today about getting through this show quickly. 7:30 start, but late start for us, and in my mind 5:30 probably the worst time to start this show, just because that's when we get a lot of injury news a lot of the time. Right now it's looking pretty clean. We're updated for everything, so hopefully we're okay on that front. Kenneth Woodhouse is here. What's going on, Ken? Happy Friday. Good to see everybody. Big weekend coming up. A lot of bad weather across the country, it seems like. Looks like the apocalypse if you look at any national weather maps. Should be fun. But more importantly for our purposes, a couple good football games on deck. A couple football games going to be really impacted by the weather. So that'll be fun to work with. But we'll be working on all of that tonight. I'll have projections up for football for tomorrow. We'll have the full slate. I'll probably do like a groups stacks type article for the entire Saturday through Monday. All the teams in it, just all to have everything all in one spot. Well, the game notes the way I usually do it. I'll have all the projections together, I guess, or maybe I'll do separate like Saturday, Sunday, Monday projection setups. I'll figure that out just to make it easier for people. But we'll get all that up. That'll be up super early tomorrow morning if you don't see it overnight tonight. By super early I mean probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning tonight when I get around to getting it finalized and posting it. But should be some really interesting football games with all the craziness going on. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting into that. But we've got a solid little 8-game sprint slate tonight. Everything on both sites runs from 7:30 to 8 o'clock. So we've got 3 games at 7:30. 5 games at 8 o'clock, and then that's it. Not a lot of time for late swapping on this one. Kind of that makes it interesting. We won't have all kinds of crazy news. We probably will have a lot of the known unknowns by lock. So there won't be a lot of moving parts on this one. We had a lot last night that dictated some changes after lock, which was annoying. It was one of those ones where it's, all right, now I'm pivoting away from everything that I had previously set up, just by virtue of, all right, this guy's, what was it? It was Jaden Hardy not starting, right? Josh Green stepped into the starting lineup instead of Hardy. We were expecting Hardy all day. It seemed like the entire industry was, and of course they went with Green. Minor changes, but that minor tweak in projection took, I had gigantic share of Hardy, and then it took it down at cut that in half. And then by virtue of having a little bit, $200-300 here, it got away from good play X, went to good play Y. There was a little bit, so there was a little bit of jumping around from what I had initially put in, and it was enough that it just skewed my lineups poorly. I didn't like my results last night at all, just based on the positions I ended up in. I felt like projections, for the most part, were there, except for, obviously, on those just wonky game situations that we had, too. In addition to those changes, it was also just one of the worst nights of basketball we've had this season. Between the Celtics getting their doors completely blown off and then not playing any of their key players in the entire second half, to the blowout in the Knicks, where for most of the game the Knicks were getting lit up, and it was a little bit closer than it seemed like it was going to be. The OKC game was out of hand, so it was just ugly. At one point, TNT cut away from the game they were broadcasting, the first game, the Bucks-Celtics game, and they were like, they threw it to Ernie, and Ernie was like, look, all these other games kind of suck too, so I don't know what to tell you guys. It was pretty funny. I was watching mostly the Knicks, but yeah, it was just an ugly, ugly night last night. So hopefully this one will be more fun, at least. I kind of like these ones where, as much as I don't like cutting off the end of any late games or anything, I do like when it's a condensed slate and it's just like bang, out of the gates, wire to wire. It's like a 6-furlong race at the track, right? We're just sprinting around the track. So it makes it fun. And we've got a few compelling games on the slate. We'll start with some of the news. So Isaiah Stewart in, Bojan Bogdanovic out. All of Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro, and Jimmy Butler, who were all doubtful to start the day, are confirmed out at this point. Those are the only news updates, and they've already been updated in projections since I posted the first projection set. We've got probables: Clint Capella, Trae Young, both probable. Caleb Martin, Jabari Walker, also probable. Questionables, Garrison Matthews, Aaron Nesmith, Jalen Smith, which could be an interesting one. LaMelo Ball, potentially coming back, questionable for tonight. That would be an interesting piece for Charlotte, obviously. Cody Martin, Wendell Carter Jr., Rudy Gobert, all questionable. And then out, I mentioned Bojan. We've also got Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason, Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Halliburton, DeAndre Hunter, Wesley Matthews, Kevin Huerter, Robert Covington, Joel Embiid, Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington, who's doubtful, Mark Williams, Draymond Green, Moses Moody, Chris Paul, Gary Payton, Torrey Craig, John Morant, Derrick Rose, Marcus Smart, which is key. All those guys being out, obviously, creates a void there. There's some value there. Gary Harris, Jonathan Isaac, Franz Wagner, Jimmy Butler is also, I mentioned that before. He went from doubtful to out. Hero, Lowry, DeAndre Ayton, doubtful, and Shaedon Sharpe out. Catch all that. So that's it. You guys should know what to do now. Up to a handful more people in here. Travis Wyndham's here. Happy Friday, bud. Beantown, what's going on, pal? Good to see you. Throwbacks. Yerp. Have we co-opted Yerp from Gun? I know Gun's not doing as much content these days, and I know we share a lot of you good folks who hang out at both shows and everything. I don't want to co-opt his thing too much, but I do like that one. It is a good way to walk into a room. Good way to say hi. I know I saw Gunn promoting a big upcoming wrestling thing that he's doing on Twitter. I don't get to check out much of. I'm not the biggest wrestling guy. I followed wrestling years back in my younger days, but it would be fun just to see Gunn out there doing his thing, or like if Gunn gets some kind of a pop from what he's doing now and gets up into the big stuff. It'd be a lot of fun. But support him if you're into it. Or support his streaming, his Twitch stuff, and his streaming video games. I think he still does that stuff, right? Pretty sure. Yeah, throwback. I know where it comes from. I've done enough shows with Gunn where I know where that comes from. I know the meaning. I know where it comes from. So let's get into this one. Not a lot of time to dilly-dally. Again, 5:37. We're absolutely getting out of here by 6:30. Let's put it that way, even if we have to cut things a little short. So let's get into it. Top of the board, we're sorted by the full slate DK win rates here. Accidentally cutting off DDR up there a little bit. I might end up taking a little bit of a haircut on DeMar DeRozan there in the next update. He's a little bit out ahead of in my projections, and I was happy with it until I saw how strongly he's coming through in that win rate, which doesn't necessarily make it wrong. But I think I can get away with maybe shaving him down slightly to bring him back to the field a little bit and have the win rate kind of normalize against where his ownership is at. Right now, we're getting him right now at this projection, 41. He looks fantastic. This win rate is quite a bit higher than his pretty significant ownership on the DraftKings slate. On FanDuel, he's just an also ran at 8,000. A guy is who he is type of an option. If I give him that same haircut, he comes down even further. He's a 15% winner on FanDuel right now. Just a piece of the puzzle, a playable part from like the upper middle class. But on DraftKings, just 7,100, small forward, power forward. That's a good price. I know DeRozan can be frustrating. I know that he's a lot of mid-range jumpers and stuff like that, and not the most reliable DFS guy, but he does have a relatively high ceiling on a lot of nights. And at 71, booking 1.04 points per dollar, which is just his season-long number, for 7,100 isn't bad on that DraftKings slate. Like looking down the board, different position, but 7,200 for DeJounte Murray, you're getting 1.09. Same position for 7,200, so 100 more for Tobias Harris. You're getting just 0.96. Granted, he's in a different situation than that season-long number is, so maybe it's more like 1.05. I don't have it in my head what his number for the current rotation is. It's in the projection. But, maybe that becomes an even proposition, and you just get DeRozan for 100 less than Harris. So I don't mind that DeRozan play. I might just try and normalize it a little bit more. I got to think about it. I don't have him crazy out ahead of where he should be, I don't think. I've got him at basically exactly his last year rate. It's a little bit higher than the this year rate so far. I don't think it's unjustified, but I might bring it back down to put it like in between the two numbers. And we're talking about a difference of 6/100ths of a fantasy point per minute. So it's not going to skew it all that much. I think it would just maybe bring it down slightly in terms of what the win rate looks like. But I like him up there. Jalen Green up at the top of the board as a moderate value play from that mid-range, 6,400 on FanDuel, 34.6% win rate, 33.2% at 6,000 on the DraftKings slate. Just a lot of opportunity, plenty of usage for him, 26.1% usage rate. For a guy that cheap to have that kind of usage, pretty good. 39.6 minutes the other night, put up 38.2 FanDuel points, 0.92 per minute on the season, 0.98 on DraftKings. We've also got Şengün looking fairly good from the Rockets side of the board. And then Cam Whitmore, I don't know how much I trust the Cam Whitmore one. It's not like he's projected like crazy. It's just the salary-based, 4,300 at the small forward, gets him there 17% of the time on DraftKings. On FanDuel, not at all. So I guess it is really, it's not that I don't trust it. I was thinking of him at the FanDuel price, where he's 0.7% win rate. On DraftKings at 43, that's getting him there justifiably enough. So that's fine. And then Freddie VanVleet. So we got a little block of Houston showing a decent amount of value going up against Detroit. These three guys, and then Jalen Green all the way up at the top there. Couple of pieces coming through from Miami. Bam, most specifically from the top end. One of the higher projected players on the entire slate. 9,000 center only on FanDuel. Gets him there 17.8% of the time. On DraftKings at 88. Pushing a 50 projection. 22.17. Looking like the top overall center. You do have a center value play at 3,700 with Kevon Looney pulling a 20% win rate. Another high price center in Şengün. So for my money, and I'm sure what we'll see in a lot of the lineups is a lot of Bam Şengün with Looney in the util spot. I would wager that we'll see a lot of combinations of those two guys and Looney, maybe some Clint Capella and Looney in there. There's a couple interesting centers. So between those guys, that is 73% of our center win rate between Clint Capella, Şengün, Looney, and Bam on the DraftKings slate, which I think gets kind of interesting. And then J. Rich at 4,700, pulling nearly a 40% win rate on FanDuel, one of the more popular players on both sites. At 4,700, point guard and shooting guard eligible on DraftKings. He's small forward and shooting guard on the FanDuel slate. So different positioning, but looks like a very good option on both sites. 30% win rate basically on the DraftKings slate at 6,200. So there's a lot to work with there. And you get a lot of plays from variety of salaries at the top of the board here, but nobody from like a crazy high salary. So that's going to create some opportunity to book just some of these value plays, some of these upper middle class types, along with some of the more expensive guys that don't necessarily hit the win rates as hard, but are the guys that are going to get you that just raw points. Beantown says, I'm not one to predict blowouts, but can we safely predict the throttling of Detroit? Would this make Houston guys tough plays? Yes and no, because there's always the if they're going to get there, those guys are going to have to get them there, at least to a point. And with a team like Houston, it's not something I worry about quite as much. When we've got a team that's, I don't want to say mostly scrubs, but like a lot of mixed bag types, a lot of let me pull up my rotation board here. Right, so I mean, yeah, maybe they kick a few additional minutes to young guys like Amen Thompson if they're lighting it up in the fourth quarter, and they throw just scrap minutes to ancient veterans like Reggie Bullock might get more than the 2 to 4 minutes he might normally see, and see a little bit of an uptick. And maybe Freddie VanVleet doesn't play a full like 37 to 39 minutes like he normally does. Maybe he just goes like 34. But if they're really lighting it up, Fred VanVleet probably did his damage in that time. Şengün probably did his damage in that time. So I think we're okay there. Looking at the board overall, because I didn't do that, it's an 8.5 point total, or 8.5 point spread rather. The one with the big spread is Portland, Minnesota. That one's at 15.5 in Minnesota's favor in Minnesota. It's also the lowest total on the board, or excuse me, second lowest total. That's worth mentioning. We've got a few lower totals to work with today too. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in the 220s. Counting, the 219.5 as being in the 220s. Orlando, Miami, the Battle of Florida, 219.5 is the lowest total on the board. That one's just a 2 point spread. But 219.5 puts the Heat at 110.75, 108.75 for Orlando. Two lowest implied totals overall, obviously. Houston and Detroit, though, 8.5 point spread, 226 point total. Houston's going to win the game by probably 10, 12 points. I don't know that they win it by 25 points. I don't know that we hit that. It's probably not something I'm going to sweat in terms of making the lineups, especially when they land fairly valuably. The big one on this board, 5.5 point spread between Indy and Atlanta. In Atlanta favored, 252 point total. So on a day with a lot of 220 point games, that 252 stands out. So does the 241 between Sacto and Philly. Just a 1 point game there, which is kind of interesting. No Embiid still for Philly. He's running out of games, by the way. If you're one to track player games played, whatever, usage, resting, all that crap that we have to worry about. Embiid's down to, I think he can miss 7 more after tonight and still qualify for the MVP and various other awards. So if that's a thing for him, then he's running out of games. And you might get a situation where it's just full-time Embiid, no nights off down the stretch at the end of the season, which could make things interesting. Or he could just decide he doesn't give a shit about the games or about the awards and sit out and get his rest and chase the title, which I think makes a lot of sense. That would be the way I would play it if I'm Philly, if I'm Embiid. But, there's all sorts of bonuses and things like that, I'm sure, tied to winning the MVP as well. So give and take there. But anyway, I think it creates an interesting situation with those new resting rules. Clippers and the Grizzlies, 8.5 point total, 8.5 point spread in the Clippers' favor, 225 point total. At the end of the night, these games are all between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, but Golden State and Chicago, the last one on my list, a 3-point spread in Chicago's favor at home, 228.5 points. So the two biggies are the Sacto and Philly and the Indy Atlanta games in terms of the point totals. Everything else pretty similar outside of Portland, probably going to get lit by by Minnesota in a low total game. Could be a Knox night. Yeah, I gave Knox a little bit. I did. I was looking at it and I had 3 or 4 minutes left over, and I was like, all right, I could just drop him onto somebody and just create like a little Joe Harris 4-minute type thing. Instead, I just put him on Kevin Knox. I took him from 16 to 20 because I do agree that there's probably that opportunity there. So, not, as I think I've discussed before, not my favorite guy in the league, considering the draft capital that was wasted by my favorite team on him. He's a 0.80 player on the season, 0.78 last year. I could give him maybe like a 0.25 point more than I've got him at. It's not really going to make any difference whatsoever. But yeah, one to watch if they're getting lit up on the Detroit side. And that's to your question, that's where, maybe things do get a little bit more interesting is moving those pieces around for Detroit. Guys like him picking up a few additional minutes. There could be sneaky value plays because all those guys cost in the 4s and the 3s. So if you want to just roll the dice, if you're building 150 lineups, if you're building 50 lineups, maybe you roll the dice a little bit around some of those Detroit guys just on the idea that, all right, they might pick up a few additional minutes. Ajer Thompson would be on that list. Forgot it's a battle of the Thompson brothers. Is this first? No, they've played before, right? Was Amen healthy for the last time they played? I forget. Yeah, Detroit really banged up, as Travis Wyndham is pointing out. Although we do have Stewart confirmed in, Bojan out though, just creates more of a void. One of their better players. Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, Alec Burks, Ajer Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, Kevin Knox, Marcus Sasser, James Wiseman, and Isaiah Livers, your projected Detroit Pistons who will play tonight. You'll probably see a couple minutes of like Joe Harris or somebody like that too. But that's who we've got on the board right now. And if you want to sort to it, that's what they look like. So again, you're just kind of rolling dice, right? Nobody popping here, nobody popping here. All these guys, even with a little bit of additional expectation for opportunity, not really showing much. They're all kind of, the guys who are getting that are kind of priced where they should be. I think Jalen Duren's my favorite play on FanDuel at 6%. On DraftKings, I guess it's Killian Hayes, but I don't know that I want to chase that at 3%. I don't know that I want to chase Jaden Ivey at 2.06%. Are they getting any kind of popularity? I tell you what, the ownership projections jibe really well with these win rates. For those top guys, they're over. It's essentially double this one, a little bit higher than that one. So if I'm going to two players at win rates that are lower than their ownership, even with their ownership being low, I probably want two better players than Killian Hayes, Jaden Ivey. Ivey's all right. I mean, 30 minutes, 41 FanDuel points the other night, 0.95 on the season, 0.97 on DraftKings, but just not really coming through, and there are better options than 7,300, 6,900 Jaden Ivey, I think. Let's look at some positions. Okay. Amen was there that night. All right. So, as mentioned, Jalen Green just looking really solid off the top of the board on both sites. 64, decent price, 4.88 points per dollar on FanDuel, and then just looking great on DraftKings at 5.51. I think the positional flex, the higher cap obviously helps him out, and the positional flex helps him get into a few additional lineups at that points per dollar mark on FanDuel. And there's really not a lot of 5+ guards in terms of points per dollar on the FanDuel slate. Hiding down here, De'Aaron Fox at 12.9. Des Bane pulls you a 15.3% win rate at 5.03 points per dollar. Trey at 5.01. So not many. And they basically come from the star tier, which is kind of nice to see. That's on the FanDuel side, of course. On DraftKings, Trey lands at for 99, a 5.44 points per dollar. So you're getting a lot more opportunity. Look how many fives by comparison there are on DraftKings in the points per dollar. That's really stark. So Malik Monk in that fairly high-end Sacramento Philly game. 6,800 shooting guard, point guard, 6,200 same positioning on DraftKings. Much better opportunity on DraftKings. Nearly a 30% win rate, 1.13 DK points per minute. On the season on FanDuel, he's at 1.09. 12.85% win rate. You're still going to come up with shares of Malik Monk across a bunch of lineups. He's just a little bit lower of a priority there. We resort by these. This is not the way to speed up the show to sit here waiting for this column to sort. So if we resort for the FanDuel win rates, just to illustrate where Monk is in play but less prioritized, he drops down from the second best win rate on DK to the 17th between all guards on FanDuel. Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard seems like he's getting a lot of attention from what I've seen. It's not the most comfortable play in the world. We've got him at... So he was a last year 0.69 per minute player on the FanDuel scale. This year 0.74 per minute for the season. I've got him up to 0.85. I think that's as comfy as I am taking him up. Let me see what that was what I wanted to look up before the show and I didn't get a chance to. Was his let's just do from week. Yeah, so I mean, there's been a bit of an uptick in the points per minute, but it's really like, if you look since January 1, it's at, where'd he go? It's at 0.78. If you look over the last week since last Friday, it's at 0.87. So again, being at 0.85 and a little bit behind, I think, where some other sites have him, I'm all right with that when he's getting this much ownership. So he looks very good. Definitely looks like he'll be a piece of the puzzle on both sites. Where'd he go? There he is. Definitely looks quite a bit better at nearly a 40% win rate on FanDuel, which is why it's so just in my head, because that's where I'm going to be playing, and I don't want to have to deal with him necessarily. On DraftKings, 20% win or 19% win rate for 4,800 shooting guard only. You get a little flex. You get a lower price against the higher relative cap on FanDuel. I get why he's good, in a good spot and a good opportunity price base, but we're talking about generally a 14.8% usage rate, 0.79 FanDuel points on the season, 0.84 on DraftKings. Not my favorite player archetype to become valuable and popular. As I've described, I like getting to guys with higher usage rates, even in a value kind of a situation. But I'll take my shots with him. If I was building one lineup, he'd probably be in it. I think if I ran an optimal right now on FanDuel, I would imagine he would be in it. So there's that. J-Rich, 40% on FanDuel, 30% on DraftKings. Just looks like a good piece of value with a 30-minute projection. He's a 0.71 player. It's 15.3% usage rate. It's a slightly higher usage rate than Kennard. A lot of what I said about Kennard probably does apply to Josh Richardson as well. But just for whatever reason, a little bit more minutes, a little bit more expectation of upside. I'm comfier with the Josh Richardson play than I am with the Kennard play. They're both on the board, and they're basically even on FanDuel. 4,500 versus 4,700. I imagine a lot of lineups with those two just landing next to one another, small forward, shooting guard, both small forward spots, however it works out. But I expect to see a ton of them on FanDuel, along with Jalen Green. On DraftKings, for J-Rich, I would expect you get a bunch more J-Rich than you do Kennard. Kennard's good, but more of an also-ran, 10 percentage point separation there. It's fairly significant. Anthony Simons at 25%. Alex Caruso, 25%. DeJounte Murray slightly below that. I like any one of those options. Trey was still questionable. So in the spot where you get no Trae Young, creates obviously a big void for Atlanta. DeJounte Murray takes a pretty significant step forward and would be a much better looking option than that, and definitely a better looking option than this. 2.54% win rate on FanDuel. He's 1,000 more against the higher cap on the FanDuel slate versus 7,200 on DraftKings. So right now, DeJounte Murray looks very good on DraftKings and could only get better. Well, I mean, obviously not if he doesn't play, but in any standard situation, could only get better. On FanDuel, doesn't look great, but could only get better. Bogdan looks more playable on the FanDuel slate, 6.6% win rate. On DraftKings, though, he's way outpacing that 19.7% win rate at 6,200, 6,500 on the FanDuel slate. And keep in mind, this Indy-Atlanta game is by far our highest total on the board. So we do want to get to some of these parts. Assuming that he goes, here's Trey, 7.13%, one of the higher, I think the highest overall projection on the board today, actually. 1.33 FanDuel points per minute on the season, a 30+% usage rate. 53 DraftKings points projected for 9,900 puts him in basically 14% of winning lineups, a 1.39 per minute player. Point guard only on both sides, don't care. Would want to have a pretty good amount of Trae Young. I would get more of him if I was playing 150 on both sites. I would have more exposure to him on the DraftKings slate, but I don't mind this. What's his ownership? Just want to see what the ownership number on FanDuel looks like compared to that win rate. I bet it's a little lower. It is basically that right on the nose. Wow, that is really, really close. This is from the RG ownership projection. Kudos to those guys. They do a good job. It's 3/100ths of a point separation between their ownership projection for Trae on FanDuel and where his win rate is right now. So looks like a plug and play star kind of a guy. And like I said, highest raw projection on the slate. Very good opportunity to rack up a bunch of fantasy points in that game. I would probably be comfy going over the field. If the field is around this in terms of ownership, Just on virtue of the opportunity for ceiling, the opportunity for raw fantasy scoring. If you wanted to double that, I would have no problem with it. I don't know that I would get crazy carried away. At this number, he's not a top priority star, but he could be, potentially a sneaky star. Maxey, 18.8% on FanDuel, 12.8% on DraftKings, looking better on the blue site. Tons and tons of opportunity in Philly. Until Joel Embiid comes back, there's just additional opportunity for everybody. And Tyrese Maxey's taking advantage of it. He's been excellent all season. In 42.9 minutes the other night, he put up 67 FanDuel points, 1.17 on the season with a 26% usage rate. Those go up with no Embiid. I don't have it immediately in front of me. I won't take the time out of our breakdown to look it up. But suffice to say, Maxey looks very, very strong on both sites. Better on the FanDuel slate for the lower relative price, though. Anthony Edwards. The only concern with this one would be the potential blowout. But when a guy from a near star level price tag, 9,200, 8,900 for Anthony Edwards. When he's not projected for out beyond 50, that means even in a blowout, if you get me like 60-ish, somewhere in that range, I'm probably okay with it. It might not be slate winning, but it could be in a winning lineup in that weird way that I try and compare those two things, right? Not a creator of a winning lineup, but a guy who could ride along into a winning lineup if you just get ceiling performances out of other players, and he gives you a standard deviation on top of his median, which would be a good, not great game. So I'm not as worried about the blowout with him being priced where he is and projected where he is, but it is a lingering concern. I do think that he gets his in most situations where they blow that team out, though. And just looks solid. I mean, 20.4% win rate on FanDuel, 14% winner on DraftKings, plenty of points per minute, plenty of points per dollar. And just a fun player to watch, too. Not many more exciting players in the league than Anthony Edwards. Freddie VanVleet, the idea that we talked about at the top of the show that they just might go and blow the doors off Detroit for 3 quarters and VanVleet loses a few of his ridiculously high minutes. Wouldn't totally shock me if he played 32, 34, even 30-ish, which would obviously take him down a peg. 8,500, he's pulling just a 7.6% win rate on FanDuel. At 79, point guard only, a 15% win rate. So even if you said, all right, I want to chop my expectation in half and say that he's about a 7% win rate, he's still playable, right? That's still a playable option. Where I would get concerned is if he's crazy popular, which he's not. If you wanted to, he's essentially double what I just said that win rate, you could cut that win rate down to, but he's less than the win rate that we're showing here, the one that actually came through the sim with normal expectation. So you're just kind of compounding a hypothetical situation into something more. I think right now he looks like a pretty decent play. Not a high priority, but a decent play, roughly 15% win rate and lower ownership than that. But again, not one to get crazy carried away with. And on FanDuel, he's already just in that, playable, in the mix kind of a guy. Good group of players right here, though. Freddie, Anthony Edwards, Trae Young, and Tyrese. Not bad. Edwards and Tyrese are leading the way between those guys. Kennard, we talked about. Bogdan, I mentioned when I was talking Atlanta. Zach LaVine, also kind of hiding here. 7,400, pretty good price for Zach LaVine. Back to full minutes, shooting guard, small forward eligible. 0.99 on the season. It's reasonable enough, but that's another guy that kind of just comparatively to whoever that was that I was talking about earlier with the 7,200 price, that's small forward. That was at a higher win rate. I forget who that was. We'll get back to it. Holiday, Conchar, a lot of guys, just playable range here. Conchar, just another guy getting through on virtue of price. A little bit of opportunity. 0.84 per minute on the season, just put up 19.9 in 25 minutes the other night. But you can see, a little bit of a bump in minutes with all the chaos going on in Memphis right now. 8.65% win rate on FanDuel. A little bit more price-based upside on the DraftKings slate. 4,000 shooting guard, small forward. You've also got $3,200 Aaron Holiday sitting here from Houston. Just an 18-minute projection showing literally a 0.0 win rate on FanDuel, 0.01% top one rate. But on DraftKings, just by virtue, again, of being a $3,200 guy, and there's not a lot of them today. 36 here for Amen Thompson with with 2 fewer minutes on the same team. 11.7 versus 5.5. That comes down to essentially which way those minutes kick. If there's additional minutes here, you'd probably throw them to the younger guy, I would expect. I think pretty much everybody knows who Aaron Holiday is at this point. So maybe a little bit of additional, like if I had to say which one of these guys would exceed expectations today, I would probably pick Amen between him and Aaron Holiday, despite Holiday having the better win rate. Paul George looking better on FanDuel, 8,400. Very good price for Paul George. Still putting up 1.15 fantasy points per minute on the FanDuel slate. 1.18 on DraftKings. At 8,200 against the lower relative cap, same positioning, just a 9.38% win rate, but a very good option on both sites. I expect we'll see Kawhi and James Harden in here as well. I think they're both playing. Desmond Bane, Klay Thompson, Devin Vassell, Bruce Brown, Andrew Nembhard. A lot of these guys looking kind of just like who they've been over the last few slates on the DraftKings side. 9,100 for Des Bane, shooting guard, small forward, puts him at just a 5.6, just correctly priced for what he's got in front of him right now. On FanDuel, still just 89 shooting guard, small forward against the higher relative cap, puts him at a 15.3. Definitely looks like a priority play, or higher priority play anyway on FanDuel. A guy I would not mind getting to some exposure on, and it's especially a situation where if a lot of the ownership is going to the Kennards and of the world, I don't mind dumping additional shares into Desmond Bane, who's probably the best player on that team right now. Kennard is on FanDuel essentially double the ownership plus 10 of Des Bane, so I don't mind that. You can have them both, obviously. That's not there's zero conflict there. So put them both in a lineup is perfectly fine. But my point is, I will definitely get to some Desmond Bane here. Klay, just 1%. Devin Vassell at 17, though, is kind of interesting on the FanDuel slate. 33.4 for just 7,000. 1 fantasy point per minute can result in some clunkers. Just 29 in 27 minutes the other night. That's a little bit ahead of, obviously, 1 fantasy point per minute. It was the minutes that were the problem there. Get him up over 30 minutes. He does have upside beyond that per minute mark, so I don't mind him here. 4.8% on DraftKings at 7,300. Definitely a playable part, but a higher priority on FanDuel. Nembhard 15.8% on FanDuel, just 4.5% on DraftKings. 55 shooting guard, point guard versus 56. Just a price difference really from site to site. But a couple pieces in that high-end Indy Atlanta game. Looks like Bruce Brown's a little bit better on DraftKings. Playable piece, but not a priority on either site. And then differentiated guys, Trey Jones, 25% on FanDuel, 3.34%, 6,200 on DK versus 56 on FanDuel. Obviously a very, very different play. Podziemski, 15.5 for 5,600 shooting guard, small forward on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's 5,900 point guard, shooting guard, just 2%. Darren Fox and TJ McConnell. TJ, another guy, got him at 23 minutes. We saw him the other day. I was talking about it, where other places had him significantly higher than I did. And I think he worked out to, I was probably 2 or 3 points low, but I think I got closer being conservative about it. 10.29% win rate on FanDuel. At 7,000 on DK, he's not showing any value really. But on FanDuel, he looks like he's getting into the mix in that high-end game. And a guy like that, if he plays more minutes, he rockets up the board because you can see the per-minute mark. All right, 1.33 this season. $1.29 last year, 1.10 the year, 1.29, 133 this season. Looking at too many columns. 1.10 last year. And I've got him basically on the mark for this season. Ben Mathurin, another piece from Indy Atlanta, looks pretty good on FanDuel. Shooting guard, small forward, 5,700. Not much across town at all. That one, 0.19 for 64. There's Harden, lingering on FanDuel, 7% win rate on DraftKings, 8,600, not really getting him very far at all. 8,800 for Terry Rozier, not getting very far on DraftKings. 91, not getting very far on FanDuel either. And if you get LaMelo, I would imagine you get a little bit of a haircut. I didn't bother looking into it just because of where he was coming up and the very high price for Terry Rozier. Melton, another guy with potential in Philly, 22.6% for just 6,100 shooting at both guard spots on FanDuel. At 65, both guard spots on DK, not showing us anything. There's LaMelo. I just threw LaMelo 28 minutes if he gets out there. Jake Swales, Wemby the Stone Nuts tonight. Oh shit, it's 6:10 already. All right, let me keep on trying to talk through this. Let's jump out of the guard spot. I think that was a fairly thorough rundown. We touched on DeRozan off the top, but again, that was who I was trying to conjure before. So 71 for DeRozan, again, that 40% win rate. Even if I gave him that little bit of a haircut, that would still be a pretty good price for what he's got ahead of him today. Alex Caruso has forward eligibility, shooting guard, small forward on the DK slate, 25% winner over there. Point guard, shooting guard on FanDuel, just 6.7%. Yeah, not one to get carried away with on FanDuel, but that's a pretty good price-driven play on DraftKings at 48.9 points per minute over there, 4.96 points per dollar today. Levine right there with him. He's similar to Caruso in that it's a 7.6% winner for 78 on FanDuel, but at 74 on DraftKings, gets there 21% of the time. Do I want all three of those guys in a DK lineup? Probably not. 2 out of the 3, I would think, is probably fine. And I just want to leave some room for some of these really good-looking Indy Atlanta plays. There's several more of them right here at the forward spots, too. So I don't know that I want to get carried away with multiple bulls here. But each one of them individually looks fine, and I think you can get away with 2 of them. From the Indy Atlanta game, we get Bogdan, Saddiq Bey, Jalen Johnson, Jalen Smith if he plays. Is that everybody at the top of the board here? I think so. Out of that group, it looks like Jalen Johnson is the best win rate on FanDuel at 14.05%. Everybody else in the single digits. On DraftKings, everybody in that group is in double digits. Bogdan at 6,200, both shooting guard and small forward, 19.73, 3,700 power forward and center eligible. That's that actually is a decent one to touch on too, though. Sacto and Philly there. Trey Lyles for just 3,700 with a 20-minute projection is pulling 19% win rate essentially. Just a price and position based play there on DK. Much lower priority, 4.2% on FanDuel. Saddiq Bey in his .80 DraftKings points per minute for just 5,500 at power forward is coming through to 17% win rate. Jalen, 14.5 for 7,200 at power forward only. And then Jalen Smith, that was Jalen Johnson. Jalen Smith on the other side, if he plays 5,000 power forward and center, a 13% win rate. So basically all of that group of guys at these forward spots from Atlanta and Indy look a little bit better on DraftKings. Everybody's playable on FanDuel, but only Jalen Johnson, I would say, is a moderate priority. Not a top priority, but a moderate priority at the position. It's a lot of guys pulling essentially double that win rate, though. Different kind of plays. Like Jaden McDaniels is a different kind of player than Jalen Johnson. But Paolo is not. 25% winner paying up to Paolo Banchero. 9,300, both forward spots for him. 1.16 FanDuel points per minute overall on the season. Just 32.9 in 35 minutes the other night, but he'd been on a tear recently. And I think there's plenty of upside, 29% usage rate. I don't want to say he's cheap, given he's probably correctly priced. But I think he's very, very playable with that 25% winner. 7.9% power forward only on DraftKings, loses the flexibility and not much of a discount against the lower cap, but very, very playable over there. Some good-looking options at the forward spots. Kuminga with a 30-minute showing 31.2%, 5.16 points per dollar on the FanDuel slate, 0.93 points per minute over there, 0.95 points per minute on DraftKings with a 13% win rate for 5,600 power forward. Here's Whitmore. Somebody just mentioned before in the chat. I have not been keeping up with what you guys are talking about in the chat, but Travis just mentioned Whitmore probably the better play. I'm talking about, I don't know who you're saying he's better than, but yeah, he looks good on DraftKings anyway. 16.9% winner on DraftKings, 4,300 versus 4,900 small forward only on both sites. Just a 0.7% winner on FanDuel. Beantown, I'm not sure who you're asking about. Or I don't know if you're even asking me, actually. Where was I? Yeah, so Cam looks definitely better on the DraftKings slate over his 13 games and about 13 minutes a night so far this season. 1.15 FanDuel points, 1.16 DraftKings points per minute. We'll see if he can keep that up. Obviously looks really good. But that's something we give a haircut to. I don't think I've got him at that exact number. I've got him 0.95, which I think is fair. Could go a little higher. Who else? Andrew Wiggins looks okay on both sites. 17.4% on FanDuel, 11.3%. He's only 4,800 over on DraftKings. He's only putting up 0.77 points per minute. It's not like it's not deserved to be that low. But it's a guy who I feel like at some point Andrew Wiggins has to click back into being at least a somewhat competent player. But maybe not. Maybe he and Klay Thompson are just trying to get traded out of town at this point. Apparently everybody's on the block over there except for Steph, who's really the only guy I would want. Cat, 5.4% winner on FanDuel, double that basically on DraftKings for 8,200. Not a bad price for Cat. Power forward and center. Had a good one the other night, 44 minutes. Took him 44 minutes to get to 54 points, but the points are all we really care about. That was a decent total from him at the power forward spot. 1.21 DraftKings points per minute on the season. 5.13 points per dollar. Not a bad option. Jabari Smith, another piece of the puzzle from Houston and Detroit. Getting a lot of Houston and Detroit guys, getting a lot of Indy Atlanta guys. And then fill in around the edges. Jabari, 14.7% on FanDuel. Looks a little better there. 10.68% on DraftKings. Paul George, the other Clipper. Or no, we talked about George already, right? It was Kawhi that we're still hunting for. Where's Kawhi? There he is. So Kawhi, 7.4% on FanDuel, 2.4% on DraftKings. So I think if I'm remembering correctly, Paul George, Kawhi, James Harden in terms of ranking the three Clippers. Boys, a lot of guys showing pretty strong values here. Sohan, almost a 30% win rate on FanDuel, 5,400 point guard and power forward. Interesting positional eligibility. 56 power forward on DK, just an 8% winner. Much more of a priority on the FanDuel slate for 5,400 and the multi-position eligibility. That makes him a pretty compelling play. Don't mind that at all. McDaniels, just price-based. 4,500 both forward spots, pulling a 32% win rate. Obviously very capable of giving you a disaster like that. 24 minutes, 6.7. FanDuel points the other night, 0.66 on the season, 15.6% usage rate. On DraftKings, a 7.4% winner. Again, I do like to get to, even at those middle class values, I do like to get to a little bit more usage if I can. And I think there's other places to go. Bane we talked about. Miles Bridges, from a upper middle class position, 8,000 on FanDuel, small forward only, basically an 11% win rate. 8,200, he does have that center eligibility on DraftKings, power forward and center over there. 5% win rate. I think he's playable on DK. Let's call him playable on both sites. He's not a guy I tend to go out of my way for that much. 1.03 on DraftKings, 1.01 on FanDuel. Capable of putting up a good game here and there. And against San Antonio, there's no reason he couldn't go out and light this up tonight. But he's not projecting like crazy. He's a 23.7% usage rate. So it's not like he's one of these extreme high-end stars. He's just a very good middle-class type player. So I'm comfy getting him, but I'm also comfy leaving him on the table at that price. If he was in the sevens, he'd be more interesting. Kawhi we hit on a minute ago. Caleb Martin hiding down here. 5,300, 21% winner on FanDuel. Obviously plenty of opportunity in Miami today with everybody missing. So Caleb Martin should pick up a little bit there. 14% win rate for Keldon. Another piece from San Antonio looking pretty good. 14% on FanDuel. At 7,000 in both forward spots on DraftKings. Not showing any value at all. So a little bit price-based opportunity there for Keldon. In 24.9 minutes, he put up 31.7. He's a 1.0 player per minute on the season. He and Miles Bridges are similar in that way, where, you know, Keldon's another guy. If I have him, I have him. I'm happy to see him every now and then. I know that he can provide me a decent game. But overall, I'm not really going out of my way for shares of Keldon. Mathurin, much, much better looking on FanDuel. We touched on him in the guard breakdown, but again, just 18% win rate there, and nothing really to speak of on DraftKings. The only outlier is Jaren Jackson across sites. 9.93% winner on FanDuel for 8,200 power forward and center. I expect we'll get a lot of them at power forward. 8,000 on DraftKings power forward and center. 0.1% winner. 39.58 projection. $621. We're going to take like 3 or 4 minutes at center, and then we're going to jump over to the Sims real quick, and then we're going to punch out of here. Got to get updated. Got to get lineups built. I don't think we really missed anybody in here. Not seeing any kind of crazy outliers from site to site. Yeah, let's jump. Kind of a sprint show for a sprint slate. He said 52 minutes into the breakdown. Caleb officially ruled in. Good. Oh, okay. Beantown looks like asked and answered by Trav. I didn't have that in the top of my head, so thanks, Travis, for answering that one. Looks like Whitmore just saw minutes, took Tate's last rotation, Jay Sean Tate's last rotation. Appreciate that, Trav. All right, centers. Bam, top of the board on both sides, 17.8%. Oh, no, excuse me. We get Sabonis cracking the top of the board on the FanDuel side, 27.9%. But Bam looks very good on FanDuel, and you can put them side by side because Sabonis has power forward eligibility. Among the center-only guys, Bam is easily the best player on FanDuel. On DraftKings, 22.1% winner. The next highest guy is Kevon Looney at 20.9%. Like I said at the top of the show, I expect we'll get a lot of these two guys, Bam and Kevon Looney together, and then a lot of Şengün and Kevon Looney together with one or the other at the util spot. We do have Trey Lyles sitting there, but he's got power forward eligibility, so you can book 3 of these guys across those positions with both of these guys in your lineup. Those are 2 reasonably good value guys to have at 3,700, both with a 20-minute expectation, 0.95 per minute, 0.85 per minute. That's not atrocious at those prices if you just want to book a lot of shares of those 2 big men. Şengün looks very, very good. 17% winner on DraftKings, 9% winner on FanDuel. I think the ownership was trending around that, so I'm happy to press the accelerator down a little bit for Şengün. Just with the idea of, maybe they get out ahead. Maybe it's not one that I get crazy overexposed to. But if you wanted to say you were 15, 18%, and if assuming that he's owned around this level, I think that's perfectly fine. Sabonis definitely looks interesting on the FanDuel side. 9,900 for him is a good price with multi-position eligibility. 1.38 points per minute. Well, I guess considering that Wemby is only 10,000 and he's putting at 1.59. Oh, right, because I've got him in the lower minutes. I was like, wait a minute, why at 1.59 is he not coming up more for 100 more? Because he's got a much lower minutes expectation and the projection is lower. But in a points per minute sense, it's not a bad price. 1.41 on DraftKings, he's 10-2, cuts into his win rate pretty significantly, but he's got ceiling still. He's more of a luxury item on DraftKings, where he's more of, on FanDuel, a slightly lower price against the higher cap. Makes him more of a priority option, center or power forward spots, and probably more in the power forward. I wouldn't mind having some lineups with Bam and Sabonis in them. I think there's enough value that you can put that together easily. Şengün at 9% definitely takes some of those shares as well on FanDuel. At 17% on DraftKings, looks like a top option over there. But I would rather have Sabonis, I think, than Şengün on the FanDuel slate. Couple of are who they are types right through here. Clint Capella, 4.67 at 7,100. At 6,100, 1,000 less. Looks a lot more playable, 13% winner on DraftKings. Jalen, if he goes, looks playable on FanDuel. Looks essentially double that for 5,000 on both sites. 1.13, 1.16. Can be frustrating because he'll run out there, put up 20 fantasy points in the first quarter, then like not play the second quarter, then come out and put up another 20 in the third quarter, then not play in the fourth quarter, or thereabouts. Can be frustrating to see in that sense, but does have some positional upside at the price-based upside. Cat we talked about in the forward breakdown. Bridges we talked about. Dominic Borlow, if you wanted to get funky on DraftKings, 3,900 is pulling a almost 5% win rate. Just looks like a falls by the wayside kind of a piece of price-driven value over there. On FanDuel, power forward only, no value whatsoever. Rudy Gobert lands in a few winners. Xavier Tillman, Miles Turner lands in a few winners. I've mentioned Turner a number of times on the show. I do like getting to additional Miles Turner shares when I can. Just has a lot of upside for where he lands price-wise and tends to be unpopular. So I don't mind getting to him. And again, it is a piece in that highest end game. Don't know if we've gotten an update on Capella's status, but that would push additional shares his way. In my mind, if there's no Capella, just left for him to have to fight against. Zubac, 5% winner on FanDuel, 3% on DraftKings. Just is who he is. No crazy outlier there. 6% winner for Jalen Duren on the FanDuel slate. Looks a little bit better than on DraftKings at 0.6. 7,400 on both sites. Gives him a little bit more upside on the center, only on FanDuel against the higher cap. Triple J we talked about before in the power forward breakdown. And then Wemby is lurking there. But with the minutes, the managed minutes right now, it just kind of caps his ceiling. His ceiling's absurd anyway. He could get into the 50s with ease. In 21 minutes the other night, he put up 45.4 points. But he's not priced for what his minutes look like right now. At least not on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's priced a little bit more effectively, but it's not really translating in the win rate. 0.91. So that's not ideal. I don't know that it's the ideal spot for Wemby. Unless there's news that I missed that he's getting back to full minutes, which I will take a look for before the next update. But with that in mind, we are coming up at 6:28. Steven, I'm with you, buddy. I think you've been here for me raving about Wemby on a couple shows already. I was lost for words talking about him the other day with just the incredible things that he does on the court. When they were playing the Knicks a couple of weeks ago, they did one of the classic pop halftime interviews where he's just usually so terse and just one word responses, or directly tells the sideline reporter, well, that's a stupid question and shit like that. They asked him have you ever seen anybody that's shaped like Wemby do what Wemby does on the court? And he was just give him a flat, just no, just nope. And a guy, for Pop to say that he's never seen that before is saying something. Speaking of Pop, if you get a chance, it just popped into my head. Didn't mean to do that. It just sprang into my head. There's a great tweet that somebody sent. I think I liked it from the rotoscouts account. But it's just Bill Belichick. It's tons of Belichick clips going around with him not being in New England anymore. It was a WEEI reporter who asked him one time, why do we have to use a roster spot on long snappers? Wouldn't it be more valuable if you could just train a position player to do long snapping and you could have that roster spot free? And Belichick, totally unprompted, totally off the top of his head, gave a 15-minute history of all of special teams, like starting back in the 60s, and going through the evolution of every special, not just long snappers either, kickers, punters, returners. Just gave an impromptu lecture. It was amazing. The man, like, it's just unreal, the depth of knowledge there. Just worth watching, and mentioning Pop obviously made Belichick spring into my head. Anyway, let's look at some sims. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you get a chance. I appreciate it. If you're not in the Discord, hop into the Discord. If you're not following the @rotoscouts Twitter handle, follow that, or X handle. In like 10 years, are kids going to be wondering, like, why do I have to type in twitter.com when I want to go to X? Hopefully in 20 years, it's not going to be a thing. Freddie Van Vliet, Josh Richardson, Alex Caruso, Jalen Johnson, Jalen Smith, double Jalen lineup, Anthony Simons, Paolo Banchero, and a util Kevon Looney in that top lineup on DraftKings. That's a surprise. Here's our Kevon Looney, Bam. Another Bam Looney. Looney Jalen. Miles Turner and Bam. It's interesting. Capella Looney. Looney Bam. Looney Gobert. A lot of Kevon Looney value plays. A lot of Josh Richardson value plays. Solid little cashers. Not bad. All right, so you guys know these columns, right? This is your probability of that lineup cashing. If you're just looking to get lineups over the cash line, if you're playing a cash game, you can use this tool that way as well. We're obviously looking for the winners. We're looking for the top ROI overall lineups. You know, you'll see different cash probabilities versus ROI because you're just creeping over the line with a lot of those. You get top 1%ers, get a little bit more balance between those, and then your win rates. The ownership sum column, you can see, you know, how popular the various lineups are going to be. Obviously, we get little lower ownership totals on a lot of those high ROI lineups. So let's see. We are relatively spendy at point guard, it looks like. A lot of Freddie VV, some DeJounte Murray, some Trey, some more Freddie, some Tyrese, Simons. A little bit of Malik Monk, though, creeping through. He seems to be the one middle-class guy. Shooting guard is a lot of J. Rich, some Conchar, some Jalen Green. You know what I'm not seeing is, what's his face? Oh, he was better on FanDuel. Kennard. Here's one. He was only a good play on DraftKings. It was FanDuel that we'll see a lot of them on. Shooting guard. Fair spread of the Bulls between DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Alex Caruso. Also getting some Cam Whitmore in there. Value-based Matty Thybulle, who we didn't really touch on. Bogdan lands in a couple. So, middle-class small forwards. I would call this basically value to middle class at the shooting guard spot. The big men were rotating between those power forward center eligible guys between these two spots and the util position. Basically, it looks like we're getting, I would say two. Well, no, maybe not. This one's interesting, though. This one goes Okongwu at the power forward, Bam at center, and you obviously get an uptick in Okongwu if Capella doesn't go. Bam at center, Looney at util, and then Cat at the forward only spot. I forgot about the forward only spot. Gives you an additional flex with those power forward and center guys. So there's a lot of different ways to put the big men together on this slate, I guess, is the overall point. I think you can go 2-2, you know, Bam, Cat, Looney, Okongwu as an example. In this top one, Jalen Johnson, Paolo Banchero, Jalen Smith, Kevon Looney kind of follows that pattern. So I think you're looking at like 2-2 across power forward, center, forward, and util between two spends, two values, or two like upper middle and two values. And then whatever didn't happen in those other spots just drops into these guard and forward spots between your value guys like Josh Richardson, your Bulls, your Anthony Simon shares. A lot of Josh Richardson landing on this end. Forward only looks a little bit more spendy than guard only. Top overall projected, again, doesn't necessarily equal the top overall rates. Does have a nice little cash probability. 7% top one, but just 0.05%. Not our best ROI number, but playable. Every $15 on DraftKings brings you back 81 with that lineup. That top projected guy is Simons, Jalen, Bam, Caruso, DDR, and Kevon Looney. Not a bad little lineup. Leaves 100 on the table. Not going to be duped. Never really worry about dupes. Unless we're dealing with like 2 games. These are all pretty decent looking lineups though, these top projected ones. Again, it's not necessarily the top ROI ones, but there are some members of this club, but you can see the ROI difference, right? We're in here's 1,500 to 2,200 in that range, and if we resort by projection, we're at 500. There's only one of those lineups in even the thousands. Let's jump out of here. 5 minutes overtime. Not tragic. I think we all knew we weren't actually getting out of here at 6:30, but we're close. Kind of surprised, not as much Kennard as I was expecting in these top lineups. There's some, but I was expecting him to be littering this board. Like I said, I've got him a little bit behind other places. There's a couple other guys I've got a little bit ahead of other places. Just differences of opinions on tweaks. But I think I've got him right. I'm pretty happy with where I've got him right now. So I kind of like that he's not coming up like crazy. Let's see what his ownership is. It's just the third highest. 42 out of those top 150. But this is behind the pace of his ownership projection by a little bit, I think. Or maybe right on it. Richardson, Kuminga. I gotta remind me, and I'll start doing this for both. Just looking at the overall player exposures in the top 150. But J. Rich, Kuminga, Kennard, Bam. Not a lot of surprises there. Sohan and McDaniels, we did mention in the breakdown, is looking like decent options on the FanDuel slate. That said, negative ROI plays, but landing in a lot of lineups. And you don't get a ton of individual players as positive ROI plays. It's just how they come together. That's a fair list of positive ROI players. Bam, DeRozan, Conchar, Tillman, Levine, Bane, Bogdan, Fox, Sadiq Bey, DeJounte Murray. There's a lot of Hawks on that list. Fair amount of Bulls on that list. A couple of the Heat guys. FanDuel, as usual, you're taking 2x2. The old Noah's Ark kind of a situation outside of centers, I guess. Just die off if we had to go a Noah's Ark situation. Die off or get into a life finds a way Jeff Goldblum kind of a thing. Looks like we are spendy on FanDuel centers. A little bit of Cat, some Gobert, got a lot of Bam. I like the Bam shares. I like the Şengün shares. Jalen Smith creeping into a few. Jalen Duren landing in a few. It's only one Miles Turner on the top of the board there. That's fine. He's one that you can just say, like, all right, I'm going to grab 10, 15 additional shares if you want to. And that pretty reliably puts you at or around the field. He's almost never popular. Good amount of Şengün as we go down the list here. Şengün and Bam, top 2 options there. And then Cat outpacing him on those very top 2 lineups. Jalen Johnson landing in a few up at the top of the board. Paolo Banchero in a couple at the top, but then absent from a lot of these until we get down into here. So it looks like we're getting a little bit of spend at one of the point guards. It's like spend middle class point guard. All right, Trey Jones, Freddie VanVleet, Conley VanVleet, Jalen Green, Steph, Conley, Darren Fox. Not really a true super value bargain bin type guy here. It's mostly from the middle and then middle, upper middle. Looks like a lot of value options at this shooting guard. Well, no, maybe we'll unwind that too. Kind of, some of these, the top ones look like some value plays, but then we get into Bogdan Bane, Bogdan Jalen, Zach LaVine, Bane. Kennard Vassell is a little bit value-ish, so here's some Kennards. And then a couple more at the small forward spot. It's FanDuel. You can do basically anything you want. It's a lot easier to break it down like where the money goes on DK. Small forward looks more outside of like Jalen and some DDR where they're falling. Some Tobias, Batum. So much positional flexibility too. A lot of these are just the same guys moving around different positions. If I had to put a finger on it, I'd say you want one value-ish, like middle class to lower middle class salary at shooting guard and one at small forward. Spendy at center, more spendy at point guard, and then whatever comes through the works at the power forward spots, because it does look like we're getting, Bay, not the cheapest guy. Paolo, definitely a good spend. But Kuminga, Lyles, we do have a Sabonis and Bam here, which I like a lot. But a fair amount of like Jabari Smiths, Jaden McDaniels, who's a Caleb. Power forward looks more, again, middle to value based. So I think we're spending mostly at point guard and center on FanDuel. And then we're taking the chalk values and middle class options of the day. All right. I'm going to kill that. I'm going to see what's up in. I got him at. I know I gave him a couple minutes. I thought I did. I gave him 12. Travis Gilliard. He's played, when he's played, he's averaged 15 and a half. When was the last time he was out there? Yeah, it's been a while. I think 12 is a reasonable expectation. I think you could go a couple minutes lower, you could go a couple minutes higher. I wouldn't put him much higher than like 16, I don't think. And then Noel right now I'm not projecting minutes for. He is he even active? It's never good when I reload. Oh man, 642. All right, we gotta hurry. Yeah, Noel's active. Could step into minutes, but I don't think it'll be enough to matter. Yeah, and you start throwing him anything on just kind of on general speculation at min pricing. Is he even on the DraftKings slate? His price doesn't come up on DraftKings for some reason. On FanDuel, he's point guard only min price. I don't think we get enough minutes. I'd be surprised. Unless you see some kind of news that would indicate that, I probably wouldn't push that one. And I don't think I would push the Gilliard one either. Again, we're just throwing him 10 minutes, or 12 minutes rather, and a sub 10 point projection. With that, guys, I do have to get this stuff updated for the people who aren't watching the show and are waiting for projections. Probably not that many of them out there, but there's probably a few. So you guys rock. Hit the like button. Keep an eye out for football content. Not sure if there'll be a show, but there'll definitely be projections and content. If I wake up earlier, if I stay up all night and I'm up, maybe we'll do something early tomorrow for football. But keep an eye on. That's why you got to subscribe with the little bell here on YouTube. And with that, good luck tonight. Somebody go win something. I will see you at some point. At the latest Monday for basketball. Maybe I'll see you over the weekend. We'll definitely have projections, content, all that stuff. Good luck, guys.